Hello, my name is Kevin, and today I'm going to walk you through a series of short demonstrations that will show you how to use IBM Urban Code Deploy to fully automate your WebSphere application server provisioning, application server configuration migration, and application deployments to IBM Bluemix. This video series demonstrates the power and value of IBM WebSphere application server, IBM Bluemix, and IBM Urban Code Deploy for rapid deployment and repeatable cloud environment provisioning. In the first part, I'm going to demonstrate how to use IBM Urban Code Deploy to fully automate the deployments and configuration of a WebSphere application server on Bluemix, including all the necessary resources and services required to start using your application environment immediately. While all of the activities can be performed manually, my goal is to show you how quickly and easily it can be set up WebSphere environments in the cloud and become immediately productive using WebSphere on Bluemix. As mentioned previously, this demonstration focuses on using IBM Urban Code Deploy to automate the activities related to setting up and configuring IBM Bluemix for your WebSphere application server environment. Specifically, the activities in the automated process will provision a new WebSphere instance on Bluemix, it will provision a secure gateway service on Bluemix, and then establish the secure gateway destinations needed to connect to the application database and Urban Code Deploy, both running on the local image. The automation also will set up and start the OpenVPN connection needed to be able to securely connect from the desktop to application server and the WebSphere administrative console running on Bluemix. Furthermore, we set up firewall rules for communication from WAS to Bluemix back to Urban Code Deploy on the virtual machine. We then deploy an Urban Code Deploy agent on the WAS on Bluemix instance and reconfigure the UCD agent to use the secure gateway. Finally, we will then focus on migrating the WAS application and the configuration from version 7 to version 9 on Bluemix. So the first thing I want to do is show you my Bluemix environment, in which case I'm just demonstrating that I have a space that I'm going to be using for this demonstration, and currently I don't have any services that have been provisioned. And of course, the outcome of the automation from this part 1 of the series would be to create and have deployed a WebSphere application server service and also a secure gateway service as part of that configuration. Alright, so next I want to take you to the IBM Urban Code Deploy environment and show you a generic process that I've created to be able to do the automation of the process that I described. Now, the processes that I have in Urban Code Deploy at the moment is a generic process. And generic processes are kind of cool in that you can use these processes as any types of automation that you would really care to do. In other words, these generic processes are not tied to any specific applications, yet can perform all kinds of automation tasks for you. So I've created this automation process called Setup Bluemix, and I'm going to show you what the process looks like, although while it runs I'll dig a little bit deeper into what these steps actually do. And basically what we can see is a series of steps that are actually orchestrated to go through all the various steps needed to configure WebSphere on Bluemix, the secure gateway, setting up firewall rules, creating an OpenVPN connection and client between the desktop and the application server environment on Bluemix, and a number of other tasks, and then finally ultimately setting up, installing, and deploying an IBM Urban Code Deploy agent on the WebSphere on Bluemix environment and linking back to the UCD server that's running on my desktop. Okay, so with that, the next thing to do is really just to run the setup. And for this particular environment, I've set up a number of properties that are input into the process. And basically, I'm providing the information necessary to log in to the IBM Bluemix environment using my credentials and the space that I showed you a moment ago in a particular region in the public Bluemix account. So I'm going to provide the process properties and crank off the process. And finally select the region of Bluemix that I want to use. So this process is going to take probably about 6 or 7 minutes to complete. So while this is running, I'm going to pause the video for just a moment, and then I'll come back and explore some of the output for you, and then we'll see the actual content that was provisioned and set up in the Bluemix environment for us. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. As expected, the process took a few minutes to run, the 16 steps, and it successfully completed. I'm not going to go through all of the steps, but let me point out a couple of things that are noteworthy here. One of the things it did was create a WebSphere on Bluemix environment for us. And looking at the output, I can see that he's gathered some information about the host name and the information on the accessing the machine, such as user ID. And I can see that the results of this output is that I have a WebSphere on Bluemix environment now running. Another notable thing that it did was create a secure gateway for us and the destinations needed to talk to on-premise resources such as our application database and Urban Code Deploy. So the secure gateway, looking at the output, looks like he's gone through a series of steps, and he's created, completed all the tasks, and has gathered the information about the secure gateway and the destination ports that it's created for us. So I can see that I've successfully created a secure gateway and the destinations. We've done some other things like we need a secure gateway client. So while the secure gateway is on the server side, we need a secure gateway client, and the client was actually installed on the desktop environment, and you can see that the gateway is now running and have a process ID. So the secure gateway client and server allows that secure communication between our cloud environment and the resources on my desktop. Another thing, I need an OpenVPN. OpenVPN allows us to have the secure VPN access from my desktop to the virtual machine running on Bluemix, and as such the WebSphere application server admin console. So we can see that he's actually created or configured the OpenVPN using the OpenVPN configurations that were downloaded from Bluemix. So finally, at the end of this, he sets up firewall rules and does a number of other things. But essentially, at the end, he completes the process by installing a Urban Code Deploy agent on the WebSphere application server virtual machine running on Bluemix. And so this completes the entire configuration. So looking back at the Urban Code Deploy resources, what I will notice is that I have an additional agent, not only a local agent that was already on my machine, but now I have an agent that is actually now installed on my WebSphere for Bluemix environment. And so all of the processes from now on, automation and the steps that I would do through Urban Code to Deploy for deploying applications or automating configurations, then would go through and connect to this agent and perform those tasks. So that's going to be in a separate demo or separate video, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But right now what I want to do is switch back over to the Bluemix environment and take a look at the resources that it did create and ensure that everything is set up and working as expected. So as you'll recall earlier, when I looked at my Bluemix environment, I didn't have any services established, and as we discussed a moment ago, I now have a WebSphere on Bluemix environment. That's my WebSphere environment, and the secure gateway environment. So let's take a closer look at what actually got created for us and how we can start using that environment. By clicking on the WebSphere application server service, right, I get a service page, and in that service page I have all the information that I need to be able to know how to connect to and use my application server environment. For example, there's a link to connect to the admin console. I can gather the password for my WebSphere administrative user. I can see the host IP address of my system. I can see that it's in the running state, and I can gather additional information such as the password for the root user on the system, among other things, right? So at this point, because the automation has installed the WebSphere application server and configured the OpenVPN server, I'm able to securely connect to the admin console. So without that configuration, I would not have been able to directly access the WAS on Bluemix account from my desktop. So what you can see here is the configuration has provided all the necessary means to actually connect to the virtual machine and the administrative console. So it looks like everything's working, and at this point, you know, as a WebSphere administrator, things would start to look very, very familiar to you running WebSphere version 9. However, at the moment, we don't have any resources actually provisioned or deployed. There's no applications deployed, and I haven't done any specific configurations needed for the application that I'm going to demonstrate the usage of in just a few moments. Now, going back to the Bluemix environment, let's go and look at the let's go back and look at the secure gateway configuration. So as I mentioned, it created the secure gateway, plus it also created several destinations. One destination being the actual database, the application database that I'm going to use in the following demonstrations or video demonstrations, but also created destinations that are necessary for the communication through Urban Code Deploy in the cloud environment. So the first thing we see is it created this on-premise gateway. That's what I named it. It has 4 destinations, and those destinations are many UCD access points plus the database for my application. So one of the things I could do is look at is in the configuration of my database destination. Here we'll notice that I have a couple of things of interest. One is the cloud host and port, and this information refers to how I would access my application database running on my desktop or on my virtual machine image going through the secure gateway. So think of it this way. My configuration in my WebSphere environment would normally point to a local server name for my database and the local port number of my database. In this case, a DB2 database, default port 50,000. And in my configuration in a WebSphere environment, I would normally point to those resources. However, running in the cloud, we need to route that through the secure gateway to get that secure VPN tunnel established. And so, as such, I'd be pointing to this information in my database and my data sources in WebSphere application server. But that's another story, and for a subsequent demo. So from what I can see in the output of the automated process and what's actually been configured and provisioned for me in my Bluemix environment, it looks like at this point all the necessary steps to run my WebSphere application server on Bluemix has been completed. So this completes this short demonstration, but in the next video I'm going to show you how to use the output from a WebSphere application server configuration migration tool with IBM Urban Code Deploy to be able to migrate a application configuration that was running on WebSphere application server version 7 to our new application server version 9 environment running on Bluemix. That's the story for the next demonstration. Thank you.